My mother-in-law kicked me out on Christmas Eve. That sentence still sits in my chest whenever people say, family is everything. For me, family will always include the image of Denise in the doorway, fairy lights blinking behind her, telling me to get out of her son's house. The living room tree was too big, crammed into the corner. Ornaments from our years together hung on it, including the crooked cardboard star I made when we were broke and thought burnt pizza on the couch was romantic. I brushed that star with my fingertips and went back into the kitchen. Lena, the potatoes are lumpy. Denise stood by the stove in a red sweater set, pearls at her throat, expression politely disapproving. They're mash, not baby food, I said. They're supposed to have texture. In this family, we don't serve lumps to guests, she replied. It looks lazy. I'd been up since 6, cleaning, basting, chopping, making extra desserts because she mentioned everyone's preferences. My feet hurt. My hair smelled like onions. I'll fix it, I said. Arguing with her in her kitchen never ended well. I grabbed the masher and attacked the potatoes. Maybe next year we'll just cater, she added. It's a lot to expect from someone who didn't grow up hosting. There it was. I didn't grow up like them. No big house, no polished silverware. Some years Christmas dinner at my mom's was turkey. Some years it was fried chicken in a cardboard bucket. Ethan walked in, rubbing his hands together. Smells amazing, he said, leaning to kiss my cheek. I turned my head. He got hair instead of skin. Mom, can you give us a minute? I asked. Denise's mouth went thin. Of course, she said, and swept out. When she left, Ethan sighed. She's just stressed, he said. You know how she gets when she hosts. She just called me lazy, I replied. In your kitchen. She didn't mean it like that, he lowered his voice. Please, Lena, not tonight. Everyone will be here soon. Just keep the peace. For me? Fine, I said. For you. By 7, the house was full. His brother and sister-in-law, the twins in reindeer sweaters. His dad in front of the TV with the game too loud. Denise floated around, topping off wine and straightening napkins, barely looking at me. I went to the spare room to grab extra chairs. As I walked back down the hallway, I heard voices from the dining room. I told Ethan from the beginning, she's not our kind of people, Denise was saying. But he wouldn't listen, and now look. Late rent, constant drama, it's exhausting. Mom, Ethan hissed, can we not do this right now? I just don't want you dragged down, she replied. You worked so hard to get where you are. You deserve someone who knows how to host, how to present you properly, not someone who thinks lumpy potatoes and takeout are acceptable. The chair slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a crash. Conversation stopped. Lena, Denise said, arranging her face into surprise. We were just talking about me, I finished, in the house I helped pay for, on Christmas Eve. Ethan stood, palms raised. Let's just sit down and eat, he said. We'll talk about this later. No, I said. We're going to talk about it now. Denise's smile vanished. If you're going to make a scene, she said, you can do it somewhere else. I will not have my Christmas ruined by your issues. My issues? I laughed once. You've spent 4 years making sure I know I'm not good enough for your son. You insult how I cook, how I work, how I grew up. Because it's chaos, she snapped. This family has standards. We don't come from that kind of background. We don't do things the way your people do. Your people. She didn't have to explain it. Everyone understood. Ethan? I turned to him. Are you really going to sit there and say nothing? Lena, please, he said. Just apologize so we can move on. It's Christmas. Apologize? I repeated. For what? Existing in your mother's house wrong? Denise shoved her chair back. That's enough, she said. I will not be disrespected in my own home. If you can't be grateful, you can leave. I stared at her. You're kicking me out, I said. On Christmas Eve. If you choose drama over gratitude, yes, she replied. Maybe some time alone will teach you how good you've had it here. I waited for Ethan to say, "No, Mom, this is my wife, she stays." He rubbed his forehead, eyes on the table. "Maybe it's better if you go to your mom's tonight," he muttered. "Cool off. We'll talk tomorrow." Something inside me went very still. "Okay," I said, "I'll go." I walked to the bedroom, grabbed my overnight bag, and packed jeans, a hoodie, my toothbrush, my laptop. No one followed me. 10 minutes later, I was on the front porch with my suitcase. Cold air bit at my cheeks. From inside, I heard cutlery clink and a burst of laughter. Denise opened the door, just enough to hold out my coat. "Merry Christmas, Lena," she said. "I hope this is a wake-up call." I spent that Christmas Eve in my car. There were other options, my mom's place across town, my friend Kayla's couch. But in that first hour, I couldn't make myself knock on anybody's door and say the words out loud. My husband's family kicked me out on Christmas. That's not a sentence you casually drop between Merry Christmas and pass the pie. So I sat in the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station, engine idling, heater wheezing, the glow from the mini-mart sign painting everything toxic blue. I watched couples go in for last-minute wine and forgotten rolls of wrapping paper. Whole families in matching pajamas. Nobody knew that in the car next to Pump 3, someone's entire idea of family was unraveling. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. "Ethan, got home okay?" I stared at the screen. My fingers shook. "Me. Yeah. Pause. Me. You really just let her kick me out." The typing dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Ethan, you chose to leave, Lena. You were yelling. The kids were upset. Mom was in tears. What did you want me to do?" I laughed, a raw sound in the empty car. "Me. I wanted you to choose your wife." No response. A minute, 5, 10. Finally, "Ethan, let's talk tomorrow when you've calmed down. Merry Christmas." Merry Christmas. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned me. Eventually, when my gas gauge dipped too low, I drove to my mom's. Her apartment building was the same one she'd been in for 10 years. Peeling paint, flickering hallway light, the whole place smelling faintly of fried food and laundry detergent. She opened the door in her robe, hair tied up in a scarf, eyes already knowing. "Baby?" That was all it took. I fell apart right there on the threshold, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. She pulled me in like she had when I was little and scraped my knees. "He let her do it," I gasped between sobs. "He just sat there. She didn't say, 'I told you that woman didn't like you,' or 'You should have seen this coming.' She just held me until my body stopped shaking, then led me to the couch, shoved a mug of cocoa into my hands, and tucked a blanket around my legs. 'Tell me exactly what happened,' she said. So I did. The potatoes, the comments, the hallway conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. The ultimatum. The porch. My mother's mouth tightened. "You're not going back there tonight," she said. "You'll sleep here. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow." Tomorrow came with its own kind of hangover. Not from alcohol. Denise didn't allow anything but good wine. But from reality. My overnight bag sat by the door like it was waiting to see whether this was a temporary storm or the start of a whole new weather system. Ethan called mid-morning. "Hey," he said, voice careful. "Hey, how are you?" "How do you think, Ethan?" He sighed. "Look, last night got out of hand. You know how Mom is. She says things she doesn't mean when she's stressed." "She meant every word." "Even if she did," he said. "You escalated. You slammed doors, Lena. You were about to ruin Christmas for everyone." I stared at the cracked ceiling in my mom's living room. "You know what I hear when you say that?" I said slowly. "I hear that your mother's comfort matters more than my dignity." "That's not fair." "What's not fair is you letting her throw me out of a house I helped pay for," I replied. On Christmas Eve. Silence. "We just need space," he said finally. "Come back in a few days when things have cooled down. You can apologize and we'll set some ground rules. I can apologize, I repeated. For what? Not appreciating your family enough while they call me trash at the dinner table? His voice hardened. I'm not doing this right now. When you're ready to be reasonable, call me. The line went dead. The next week was a blur of awkward phone calls and half-truths. To my boss, family emergency. I need a few days. To Kayla, we had a fight. I'm at my mom's for a bit. To my aunt, no, nothing's wrong. We're fine. Just busy. I didn't have the language yet for what had happened. He chose his mother over me. Sounded childish, dramatic. So I shrank it, softened it, turned it into something more palatable. Denise did not. By New Year's, the story spreading through Ethan's side of the family went something like this. I'd stormed out on Christmas, screaming and slamming doors, because I couldn't handle constructive criticism. Poor Ethan was heartbroken, but trying to make it work. The first time I saw that version in a cousin's Facebook post, my chest went hollow. She's rewriting it already, Kayla said, scrolling beside me on the couch. Of course she is. That woman would lie to God's face if it made her look better. I watched the comments roll in. Penvi, you did so much for her, Denise. Some people don't know how good they have it. Pranvi, praying for you and Ethan in this difficult time. Should I say something? I asked. Correct them? And start a comment war under her humble brag post? Kayla shook her head. They don't want the truth. They want a villain. You're it. I turned my phone off and put it face down. For the first time since I married into the Williams family, I realized how alone you can feel while technically belonging to a whole clan. It wasn't just that they believed Denise, it was that they wanted to. It kept their world simple. Good son, crazy wife, long-suffering mother. The practical stuff came next. How long could I stay at my mom's tiny apartment when she already worked double shifts and shared her one real bedroom with my teenage brother? How much of the rent on our house would Ethan keep paying if I didn't go back? At first I told myself it was temporary. I even went back one afternoon when I knew Denise would be at work, heart pounding as I climbed the familiar front steps. My key still worked. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and something floral. Her air fresheners, not mine. Ethan wasn't home. The tree was gone. The corner where it had stood was bare. A faint ring on the hardwood where the stand had pressed down. Our wedding photo still hung on the wall. I stared at it for a long time. His arm around me, my head tipped into his shoulder. Both of us grinning like we'd hacked life. On the hall table, a stack of mail. One envelope with my name, in Denise's handwriting. I opened it with my thumb. Lena, I hope by now you've had time to reflect on your behavior. I am willing to welcome you back into this family, but only if you understand that some changes must be made. Our home has standards. Our son has worked too hard to be weighed down by someone who refuses to grow. You are impulsive, emotional, and defensive. This is not sustainable. If you wish to return, I expect an apology. Not just to me, but to everyone who witnessed your outburst. If you cannot do that, maybe you are better off elsewhere. Sincerely, Denise. My first instinct was to crumple the letter and throw it in the trash. Instead, I folded it back up, slid it into the envelope, and put it in my bag. I wanted the reminder. The next time I was tempted to think, maybe I overreacted. I needed proof that I hadn't. I packed my clothes, some books, my skincare, left the wedding photo on the wall. When I walked out, I locked the door behind me, like I was closing something more than a deadbolt. Life shrank after that. I moved into a studio apartment over a laundromat. The ceiling cracked in one corner. The bathroom tiles were old and chipped. The window looked out onto an alley, not a yard. But it was mine. My name was on the lease. No one could decide I didn't belong there and throw me out into the cold. Money was tight. Ethan froze our joint account until the lawyers figure everything out, which sounded neat and clean coming out of his mouth, and felt like betrayal when my card declined at the grocery store. So I said yes to everything. Extra shifts at the cafe where I worked as a manager, catering gigs on weekends, a neighbor's request for help planning her kid's birthday party because she'd seen how organized I was with inventory and schedules. "Could you do this?" she asked, waving at the Pinterest board on her phone. "I'll pay you, obviously." "I mean, yeah," I said slowly. "I love this kind of stuff." I spent that whole week staying up late at my tiny table, sketching layouts, budgeting balloon arches and dessert tables. On party day, I watched kids squeal over a cake I'd arranged and adults compliment the way everything flowed. "You did all this?" one mom asked. "Yeah," I said, flushing a little. "Just playing around." "You should charge more," she replied. Seriously, people pay good money for someone who can make their life look like an Instagram post. I laughed it off, but that night, alone with my spreadsheet of expenses and the small envelope of cash the neighbor had handed me, a thought lodged itself in my brain. Maybe I wasn't just impulsive, emotional, and defensive. Maybe I was also good at things. Really good. The shame didn't vanish. It just changed flavor. In the beginning, it was hot and raw. Humiliation. Replaying the porch scene in my head at 3 a.m., wondering what all his relatives were saying about me. Later, it turned quieter, heavier. A constant low-grade hum of failure. Failed wife. Failed daughter-in-law. Failed picture-perfect Christmas. There were days I almost called him, drafted long texts about how we could go to counseling, set boundaries, force Denise to respect us. But then I'd remember the way he stared at the table while I stood by the door with my coat half on. The way his first concern had been, "The kids are upset, and don't ruin Christmas," not, "You're my wife, you're not going anywhere." So instead, I called other people. I called Kayla when I wanted to text him. "You are not going back into that house." She'd say firmly, "We are not doing seasons of Denise featuring Lena as the scapegoat." I called my mom when my account balance dipped too low and my pride was fighting with my panic. "I can spot you the light bill," she'd say. "You'll pay me back when you can. That's what family actually does." I started seeing a counselor at the community center once a week. It was free, which meant the waiting room was always full and the sessions were short. But the woman I saw, Ms. Carter, had a way of making 30 minutes feel like a reset button. "You were taught that love means earning your spot," she said one day, tapping her pen against her notepad. "That if you just perform well enough, cook well enough, smooth over enough conflict, swallow enough insults, you'll finally be allowed to stay." I swallowed. Isn't that what being in-law family is? Compromise? "Compromise isn't the same thing as erasure," she said. What Denise wanted was not compromise. She wanted control. And Ethan let her use you as the price of his comfort. "Feels like I failed," I muttered. "You survived," she corrected. "There's a difference." Work became my anchor. At the cafe, I threw myself into everything. New menu displays, better workflow for the morning rush. Training the high school kids so they didn't just dump foam on cappuccinos like shaving cream. "You should be running this place," my boss, Marco, said one night as we closed up. "I am running this place," I pointed out. "You're just the guy who signs checks." He laughed. "For real though, if you ever want to do your own thing, catering, events, whatever, you've got the brain for it." I tucked that away too. On weekends, the birthday party turned into a baptism reception, then a retirement brunch, then a small office holiday party. Word spread in the way it always does across barbershops and group chats. "Call Lena, she'll make it look nice." It wasn't glamorous. I still came home with aching feet and grease under my nails from scrubbing rented chafing dishes. I still had nights when I cried over Denise's letter like it was fresh. But slowly, my calendar filled. The savings account with just my name on it grew $50 at a time. The grief and humiliation were still there, but they had to share space now. With supermarket flowers left over from centerpieces, with screenshots of clients texting, everyone loved it. With sketches of table layouts and menus, with the quiet, stubborn thought, if I can build this much out of the ruins of Christmas Eve, what else can I build? I didn't go from over the laundromat studio to mansion overnight. If you looked at my life on Instagram now, the stone driveway, the double staircase, the 2-story foyer with the 12-foot Christmas tree, you'd think it was some kind of fairy tale glow-up. But the truth was a lot less cinematic and a lot more Excel. It started with a spreadsheet. One night, about 8 months after Christmas Eve, I sat at my wobbly little table with a notebook, my old beat-up laptop, and every scrap of info from the little favors I'd been doing. Party budgets, grocery receipts, random notes I'd scribbled on napkins, number of hours, cost of decorations, what people actually paid me versus what it really cost. I made 3 columns: how much I charged, how much I should have charged, how much I'd charge if I believed I deserved to be paid like a professional. The last column made my chest tight. People like me don't charge that, I muttered. People like me. The phrase sat wrong in my mouth. Like Denise had moved into my head and was renting space for free. I stared at the numbers for a long time. Then I opened a fresh tab and typed a name. Lena Cole Events. I watched the cursor blink, like it was waiting to see if I'd backspace. Instead, I hit save. The first time I quoted a real price, I thought I was going to throw up. It was for a 50th birthday party. A friend of a friend. Nice house in the suburbs. Nothing crazy. She wanted something elegant, nothing tacky, just put together. I put together a mood board, a draft menu, a sketch of how the room could look. When it came time to talk numbers, my instinct was to lowball like always. Instead, I took a breath and said, "My full service fee is $1,200. She didn't even flinch. "Okay," she said, "that seems fair. Where do I send the deposit?" I swear I nearly looked over my shoulder to see if she was talking to someone more qualified standing behind me. That night, I lay in my tiny bed, staring at the ceiling. $1,200 for something Denise would have called just what women do. Maybe the problem all along hadn't been that I wasn't worth anything. Maybe it had been that I surrounded myself with people who needed me to believe that. The years after that became a blur of event days and late nights. I kept my job at the cafe for stability, but Lena Cole Events turned from side gig into a second full-time job. Baby showers, anniversaries, graduation cookouts. Then, slowly, bigger things, a small company's holiday party, the charity gala in a hotel ballroom, a wedding at a vineyard an hour outside the city. I got a website, bad at first, something I threw together with a template and stock photos, but it was mine. I posted before and after videos on social media. Empty rooms turned into twinkling candlelit spaces. People started sharing them. "I didn't know you did this," an old college classmate messaged. "My sister's getting married next spring. Can we talk?" The first time I said, "My minimum for weddings is $5,000. My voice trembled. The bride nodded like that was normal. "Oh, good," she said. "We were hoping to find someone serious." Serious. That word felt like a warm coat I'd been denied for years. In between the pretty photos and events, there was still the legal stuff. The divorce papers came about a year and a half after that Christmas, thick and official, full of language about irretrievable breakdown, like our marriage was a machine that had just worn out. Ethan wanted the house. Denise had co-signed with him ages ago. Their lawyer made sure that was highlighted. I could have fought harder, dragged it out. Part of me wanted to, just to keep him as uncomfortable and tethered as he'd made me. Instead, I signed. Not because I didn't care, but because by then, I'd stood in so many beautiful spaces that I knew walls were just walls. And magic came from the people inside. I didn't want a house I could be thrown out of again. I wanted something that nobody could claim I didn't deserve. So I let it go. The settlement wasn't generous, but it was something. Combined with my savings from events and a small loan my mom insisted I accept. Not a handout, an investment, she said, glaring when I tried to argue. I moved out of the studio. First to a one-bedroom in a decent complex, then to a narrow little townhouse with peeling shutters and good bones. Every move up the ladder, I promised myself the same thing. This isn't to prove anything to them. This is for me. For the girl who spent Christmas Eve in a parking lot. On rough nights, when fear whispered that I'd messed up leaving, I would list, out loud, the things my new life didn't have. No walking on eggshells in someone else's kitchen. No letters telling me I was lucky to be tolerated. No man telling me to apologize for being upset that I was being thrown away. I'd look around my cluttered little townhouse with its mismatched furniture and Dollar Tree decor and feel something that looked suspiciously like peace. The mansion started as a joke. 3 years after the exile Christmas, a real estate agent hired me to stage an open house for a newly built property in a gated community on the other side of town. "It's this big showpiece," she said, swiping through photos on her phone. "Developers want to wow people. I need someone who can make it feel like a home, not a catalog." When I pulled up on the day of, my chest tightened. It was absurdly big, the kind of place Denise would have drooled over. A circle drive, stone facade, pillars. "A little on the nose," I muttered, hauling flower buckets and boxes of decor out of my trunk. Inside, my voice echoed. 2-story foyer, curved staircase, massive kitchen with an island bigger than my entire first apartment. A formal dining room that looked like it had never met actual food. As I worked, sprinkling warmth into the cold perfection, throw blankets draped just so, family photos, borrowed, framed stock images on side tables, candles where buyers would imagine their future holidays. I kept getting déjà vu. I could see the ghost of Denise at the head of that dining table, passing judgment with the gravy. I could see Ethan checking his watch, worrying about whether the napkins matched the plates. And I could see a version of me that no longer existed, hovering on the edge of those scenes, always trying to earn the right to sit down. By the time I finished, the house glowed. We did an evening showing for a VIP event. The real estate agent walked through, wide-eyed. "This looks like a movie," she said. "I need to raise your rates." I laughed, but my throat felt weird. As I drove home that night, my car still smelled like pine garland and vanilla candles. My phone buzzed at a stoplight. "Real estate agent, I'm serious. You have no idea what people will pay for how you make a house feel. Don't undersell yourself." I thought about Denise's letter, about our home has standards, about who she thought got to decide what was too much or not enough. By the time the light turned green, I decided I was done letting people like her set the price of what I brought into a room. Things accelerated after that. The open house sold in 2 days. The developer called me personally. "Whatever you did in there," he said, "we want that for all our high-end builds. Full contract. We'll pay your rate." My rate. Not a little extra, not exposure. I hired help. Not just random cousins and friends paid in pizza, but assistants I trained, planners I trusted. Women who were used to being behind the scenes, making other people's lives look perfect, who'd never been told their skills were called logistics and operations and design, and that those words could be attached to real money. We worked weddings that cost more than my annual salary had been 5 years before. We staged homes where the wine cellars were bigger than my mom's entire apartment. Every time I walked through another marble entryway, I felt the old ache in my ribs. Not because I wanted what they had exactly, but because I could see now that the thing I'd been scrambling for under Denise's roof had never been square footage or chandeliers. It had been safety, respect. A place I could set down a bag without wondering if someone was about to tell me I didn't belong. Still, When my accountant sat me down at the end of the 4th year and showed me my numbers, I choked on my coffee. "You can afford a house," she said. "I have a house," I replied. "My little townhouse with its crooked blinds and 2 potted plants that refuse to die." She shook her head. "A bigger one, the kind you used to stage for other people. If that's what you want." That last line hung in the air. If that's what you want. Not what Denise would brag about. Not what Ethan's friends would approve of. What I wanted. I thought about it for weeks. I drove around neighborhoods I never used to enter. Not because anyone banned me, but because it had never occurred to me to see myself there. I'd park on the street and just look. Some of the houses felt like shrines. All sharp edges and spotless driveways, no toys in the yard, no scuffs on the front door. Pretty, but cold. I'd get that tight feeling in my chest and drive away. Then one evening, my GPS took me on a wrong turn. It was a hilly street, not gated, just tucked away, lined with big, older homes. You could tell they'd been built before everything became copy-paste. Wide porches, trees whose roots had cracked the sidewalks, lights in the windows that didn't look like they were staged for anybody but the people inside. Halfway down, I saw it. White brick, dark shutters, big wrap-around porch. It was clearly huge, but it felt like somewhere you could show up in slippers and a robe, and nobody would say you were ruining the aesthetic. I parked without thinking. There was a for sale sign in the yard with a smaller price-reduced plate tacked on beneath. My heart thudded. I pulled out my phone, looked up the listing, scrolled through the photos. Foyer, staircase, kitchen, backyard with a big old oak and a swing hanging from a sturdy branch. I was stupid enough to go see it the next day. Stupider still to bring my mother. She walked through each room slowly, fingertips brushing banisters, window frames, countertops. "This house has been loved," she said finally. "You can feel it." "Loved? Or haunted?" I joked weakly. Because my brain was doing cartwheels between "I can't afford this" and my accountant literally told me I could. My mom turned to me. "Do you want it?" "I don't need it," I deflected. "It's huge. It's a lot." "That's not what I asked." I swallowed. My throat felt tight. "I want a place where I can host Christmas and not worry someone's about to tell me to leave. I want a house my kids, if I ever have them, will call home without having to pass someone else's standards first. My voice cracked. "I want to know that somebody like me can have this." She nodded, eyes shining. "Then make it yours." So I did. Not easily. There were inspections and negotiations and a small army of people who looked at my bank statements and tax returns and kept asking, "Are you sure you want to spend this much?" I was. When they handed me the keys at closing, my hands shook like they had the night I sat in my car outside the gas station. Back then, the key I held had been to a house someone could banish me from. This time, the key was to something I'd built, every inch of it paid for in early mornings, late nights, and the decision to believe I was worth more than Denise's verdict. I moved in late October. By December, the mansion didn't feel like a mansion, to me. It felt like a house still getting used to being lived in again. The smell of paint lingered in some rooms. There were boxes I hadn't unpacked, places I hadn't decided on curtains for. But the kitchen was broken in, flour dust on the counters, spice jars lined up like soldiers. The living room had throws draped over the arm of the couch and one cushion that always slumped because my goddaughter loved to jump on it. The first Christmas there, my friends refused to let me pretend it was just another work month. "We're doing it properly," Kayla said, barging in with giant bags of ornaments. "You got thrown out of a house on Christmas Eve. You are going to reclaim this holiday." We spent an entire Sunday turning the house into something out of one of my event mood boards. Except this time, we were allowed to be messy. They made me get a ridiculous tree, taller than the front door. We strung it with warm lights, not those cold white ones Denise liked. We hung ornaments that meant nothing to anyone but us. Photos clipped to twine, macaroni stars my goddaughter made. A little ceramic washing machine my mom thought was hilarious because you started over a laundromat. My mother stood back at one point, hands on her hips, surveying everything. She would hate this, she said. Who? I asked, even though I knew. Denise, she said. All this color, all this noise, people putting their feet on the furniture. She'd have a fit. We looked at each other. The silence lasted a beat. Then we both started laughing. It wasn't mean. Not exactly. It was the laugh of people who had survived someone else's rules and finally realized they were allowed to ignore them. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, the guest list was a patchwork. My mom and brother, Kayla, coworkers who didn't have family nearby, a neighbor whose husband was deployed. A couple of clients turned friends who had heard me joke about Christmas redemption and invited themselves. We cooked too much food. People showed up in sweaters and fuzzy socks, not cocktail dresses. Someone brought karaoke. My living room turned into a chaotic, joyful mess. At one point, I slipped away and stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at the scene below. My house, my guests, my rules. No one was looking at me like I was a guest who hadn't measured up. No one was waiting to see if I'd overstep. They were just happy to be there. I could feel 16 different versions of myself watching it too. The girl crying in her car, the woman sitting at a wobbly table with a spreadsheet, the exhausted manager closing a cafe at midnight. You did good, I whispered to all of them. The doorbell rang then, slicing through the noise. I checked my watch, confused. Everyone I was expecting was already there. Kayla yelled from the kitchen, "Lena, someone's at the door." I headed downstairs, pressing my hands against my jeans to wipe away the butter stains. The bell rang again, sharper this time. When I opened the door, the December air rushed in. And there she was, coat buttoned up to her chin, makeup perfectly done, but a little heavier than I remembered, like she was trying to fill in cracks. A gift bag in one hand, the other clutched around the strap of her purse. "Lena," Denise said, eyes sweeping past me to the glow behind my shoulder. The tree, the movement, the blur of people. "Hi," I said. My voice came out calm. She swallowed. "I heard you bought a house," she said. "I got the address from Ethan. He, told me you were having people over tonight." "Of course he did." "What do you want, Denise?" I asked. For the first time in all the years I'd known her, she actually looked uncertain. "I wanted to see you," she said, "to maybe join you, if there's room." Her gaze flipped back to the warmth behind me, then to the snow-dusted porch under her feet. How the tables turn, a cruel part of me whispered. But I didn't say that, not yet. I just stood in the doorway of my own mansion on Christmas Eve, looking at the woman who had once stood in her doorway and told me to get out, and realized how much space there now was between the version of me who left that porch in tears and the one who stood here now, with the choice on my side of the threshold. For a second, I didn't say anything. Behind me, someone laughed at a joke from the living room. Music thrummed softly. The smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey drifted down the hallway. My Christmas. In front of me stood the woman who had once folded her arms in her doorway and said, "Maybe you should go, right now." Denise shifted her weight, the gift bag rustling. "I brought something," she said, "for you, for the house. I thought maybe—" Her voice trailed off. She swallowed it back down. If you've never seen your former judge in the defendant's position, it's jarring. She looked smaller. Not physically. She was still in one of her tailored wool coats, still had the pearls, but the certainty was gone. The sharpness in her eyes had been replaced by something almost nervous. "How did you get here?" I asked. "Uber," she said. "I don't like driving at night anymore." "That's not what I meant." She understood. Of course she did. Her fingers tightened on the handle of the gift bag. Ethan told me you've done well, she said. He mentioned the business, the house, said you were hosting for people who didn't have anywhere else to go tonight. Her mouth twitched. You always did like gathering strays. The old me would have flinched, heard the insult under the compliment. The new me just raised an eyebrow. Why aren't you with Ethan? Something flickered across her face. He's out of town. On Christmas? He and his girlfriend went to Aspen, she said stiffly. Her family has a place there. Ah. So why aren't you with them? I asked. We both knew the answer, but I wanted to hear it. She swallowed again. I wasn't invited, she said. He said it would be too much energy with all of us under one roof. The irony was so thick, I could have iced cupcakes with it. You're surprised? I asked softly. That someone you raised to believe comfort comes first chose his new life over you? She flinched, just a little, but I saw it. I know I made mistakes, she said, phrases clearly rehearsed. I've had a lot of time to think, especially the last few years, and I thought maybe if we could just start over, I supplied. Her shoulders dropped. Something like that. Behind me, my mother's laugh rang out. For the first time, Denise's eyes really focused past me, taking in details. The tree, the pile of shoes by the door, the coats heaped on the bench. These people, she said quietly, are they your family? Yes, I said. Not sort of, not most of them, just yes. She nodded once, sharply, like the answer hurt. I shouldn't have come, she muttered. This was silly. Her voice wobbled, and that startled me more than everything else combined. It's my first Christmas Eve alone. I thought maybe, if there was any chance, the Denise I'd known would have rather swallowed glass than admit to being lonely. Now she stood on my porch, breath fogging in the cold, pride leaking out of her in tiny, reluctant drops. Any chance of what? I asked. Say it. Her jaw worked. Of being with family, she said finally. Of being with you, even for a little while. There it was. Not just I was in the neighborhood. Not, I thought I'd drop off a gift. A request. A plea. My mind split down the middle. On one side, the memory of her voice saying, Our home has standards, Lena, while she held the front door open like a trap. The way Ethan's eyes had dropped, the way neither of them had said my name again all night. The week in my mom's apartment, staring at a life reduced to garbage bags and cardboard boxes. On the other, the years it had taken me to build something that looked like this life. Every event, every spreadsheet, every night, I'd fallen asleep with my back sore and my heart stubbornly refusing to stop beating. I thought about slamming the door. I really did. For a second, the image flashed fully formed, me saying something devastating and quotable. Sorry, our home has standards. Then closing the door softly in her face. She deserved it. But here's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. Sometimes the fantasy tastes sweeter than the reality. Because in that doorway, looking at a woman who had built her identity on being the queen of Christmas, and now stood shivering on my porch, something inside me unclenched. Not for her. For me. What would you have done, I asked quietly, if it were me on your porch that night, saying these words? She inhaled sharply. Her gaze dropped to the gift bag, as if it might answer for her. I don't know. Yes, you do, I said. You would have called me dramatic. You would have told me to stop making everything about me. You would have said tonight was not the time. A flicker of shame crossed her face. And you would have shut the door, I finished. Yes, she whispered. The girl who spent Christmas Eve in a car wanted to dance at that confession. The woman in the doorway just nodded. I'm not you, I said. Her eyes flew to mine. And not inviting you in because I forgot, I continued. I haven't. I remember every word, every look. I am not over it, and I probably never will be. She opened her mouth. Closed it. But, I said, I also remember what it felt like to have nowhere to go on a night that's supposed to be about family. Silence stretched between us, filled with music and the clink of dishes and the muffled sound of someone leading my mother in a horribly off-key karaoke version of Silent Night. "If I let you in," I said slowly, "it will be as my guest, not as my judge, not as the woman who gets to decide if I'm good enough. Those days are over. You will be polite to everyone in that room. You will not bring up the past unless I do. You will not make backhanded comments about my food or my friends or my life." Her throat bobbed. "And if you do," I finished, "you will be asked to leave, and I will not feel guilty." She nodded quickly. Of course, thank you, Lena. I can." I held up a hand. "We're not done," I said. "One more thing." She stilled. "You're going to say the words," I told her. "Not the pretty version, not the passive one. Say what you did." Her face went pale beneath the carefully applied blush. "I kicked you out," she said eventually. Each word sounded like it scraped her throat on the way out. "On Christmas Eve, from a home you helped pay for, and made the day about my hurt feelings instead of your dignity." Her voice shook, "And I'm sorry for that, for all of it." I let the words hang there, heavy and ugly and real. Then I stepped back. "Come in." She blinked. "Just like that?" "No," I replied, "not just like that. I've been building up to this for years. You're just arriving late." She laughed once, a choked little sound. As she stepped over the threshold, I had a flash of memory. My own feet crossing a different threshold years ago. Shoes wet from snow, heart pounding. Back then, I'd walked into someone else's kingdom, trying to make myself small enough to fit. This time, the house felt like it shifted around me. "Shoes off," I said lightly. "My floors, my rules." Some of the tension broke. She bent down, unzipped her boots, suddenly human in fixed socks with a hole in one toe. The queen had feet like everyone else. We walked down the hallway together. "My mother saw us first?" Her eyebrows shot up so high, I thought they'd disappear into her head wrap. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and came forward slowly, eyes flicking between us. "Evening," she said. "Merry Christmas," Denise murmured. "Your home is beautiful, Lena." "Our home," my mom corrected gently, with a pointed look at me, "is a blessing. Lena just happens to be the one God trusted with the mortgage." Laughter rippled through the room. The ice, already cracking, broke. No one rolled out a red carpet. Nobody rushed to hug Denise like a lost aunt. Most of them didn't know her. She was just another guest in the rotating flow of my kitchen, handed a plate, asked if she wanted dark meat or white, pointed toward the drinks. I watched her take it all in, the kids playing on the rug, my brother and Kayla arguing over a domino game, my goddaughter asleep on the couch with a half-eaten cookie still in her hand. Nothing was matching, nothing was curated, but everything was warm. Later, I found Denise standing near the tree, staring at the little ceramic washing machine. "What's this one for?" she asked. "My first apartment," I said. "Over a laundromat. Mom bought it for me when I moved in. Said one day I'd hang it in a kitchen where I didn't have to fall asleep to the sound of spin cycles." Denise's lips trembled. I had no idea. "You didn't ask," I said. She flinched. "No," she admitted, "I didn't." For a while, we just stood there, the lights reflecting off the ornaments, the room a blur of motion around us. "I used to think," she said suddenly, "that protecting my son meant keeping everything controlled, proper, that if I enforced standards, he'd never be looked down on. I pushed him so hard to climb that he started stepping on people to do it, including you." I stayed quiet. It wasn't my job to ease the weight of what she was finally seeing. "I lost him anyway," she whispered. "He may call, he may visit, but I lost the part of him that was soft, gentle. I don't know how to get that back." That's between you and him, I said, not me. She nodded, eyes wet. But I will say this, I added. He learned from somewhere that love is conditional, that acceptance is earned, that comfort matters more than courage. You can't undo that in one Christmas Eve. Her tears spilled over. I know. I handed her a tissue from the box my mother had oh so conveniently placed on the console table earlier. Black moms, stay ready. I can't promise we'll ever be close, I said. I'm not going to pretend this house erases that porch. It doesn't. But I can promise you this. You will never again have the power to decide whether I belong. She looked up at me then, really looked. You don't know how freeing that is to hear, she said. Oh, I do, I replied. I had to say it to myself first. The night wore on. Denise did, okay. She made a few reflexive comments. Interesting choice about my non-whitened mashed potatoes. A tiny gasp when my brother cussed during a story. But she caught herself. The way someone newly in physical therapy catches their foot before they trip. At one point, I walked through the dining room and heard her talking to my neighbor about my business. She built it from nothing, she was saying. I didn't understand it at first. I thought it was a hobby. She swallowed. I was wrong. She's really something. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it wasn't nothing either. At midnight, after most people had left, and the house was finally quiet, I walked her to the door. The cold air shocked us both. The night was clear, stars sharp over the bare branches of the oak in the yard. Thank you, Denise said. No preamble, no qualifiers, for letting me be here tonight. You didn't have to. You're right, I said simply. She gave a faint, sad smile. I can't change what I did, she said, or what Ethan did. I know that. But if you ever wanted to try again, to maybe build something new, I'd like that. I took a breath. I'm not ready for something new, I said. Not yet. Tonight was a start. That's all I can offer right now. That's more than I deserve, she whispered. I thought of all the nights I'd spent wondering if I deserved better. How long it had taken me to stop asking that question. Deserving doesn't always enter into it, I said. Choices do. She nodded, eyes shining. Well, Merry Christmas, Lena. Merry Christmas, I replied. She stepped out onto the porch. For a heartbeat, I saw her as I had that first night, framed by a doorway, making a decision that would change both our lives. This time, I was the one who got to close the door. I didn't slam it, just eased it shut, soft but sure, and turned the lock from the inside. When I walked back toward the living room, my mother was waiting halfway down the hall, arms crossed, eyebrow arched. Well? She asked. Well, what? You all right? She said. I thought about it. I am, I said. For the first Christmas Eve in a long time, I really am. She smiled, that slow, deep smile only a woman who's watched you crawl through fire can give. Good, she said. Now come get this pie before your brother eats the whole thing. I laughed and followed her. Later that night, when the house was finally still and the dishwasher hummed in the dark, I stood alone in the foyer, looking up at the massive tree we'd decorated ourselves. There was no ghost of Ethan in this house, no echo of Denise's disapproval. Just my life, my choices, my people. Years ago, a woman had kicked me out of a house and made me wonder if I was worthy of any home at all. Now, that same woman had stood on my porch and asked, not demanded, asked for a place at my table. I hadn't let her in to prove anything to her. I'd done it to prove something to myself. That I could be generous without being a doormat. That I could offer grace without ceding power. That I could remember exactly what someone did to me and still refuse to let it define who I became. My mother-in-law once threw me out on Christmas Eve and made it clear I didn't belong. Years later, she stood outside my mansion, shivering in the cold, begging for an invitation. And the real revenge wasn't that I had the bigger house. It was that I had finally built a life where her approval didn't matter, and a heart big enough to open the door anyway, on my terms, in my home, in a world where I was no longer auditioning for a role in her story. I was writing my own.